Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Paul Lindstrom. I'm the Managing Partner for PwC here in Brisbane. And I'll be moderating the discussion with the Premier this afternoon, as well as taking a number of questions from the floor. I just thought I might just start off, because we had a discussion last year, Premier, and you spoke about a very ambitious reform agenda. And reflecting on what you've said then, I think, to me, it sounds like you've achieved a lot. I contrast that with the way the community or the electorate sort of reacted to it over the last 12 months. Perhaps the pace of change or the extent of change has been difficult to get across. And even I guess your holiday was interrupted last week with the Senate inquiry happening now into Queensland government. I mean, how do you take that on board, and how do you actually feel about things given, you know, those issues you had to deal with?
Okay, well, we did move quickly, and I suppose the reason we moved quickly, ladies and gentlemen, is because we wanted the benefits to flow. If you don't start with vigour and determination, you'll never get anywhere. So the reason for the pace of change and the decisions of government was so that we could actually deliver and get the runs on the board for everybody, particularly families around this state. In terms of the response, well, I guess about 11 weeks and 2 days ago, but who's counting, I stood up with the Cabinet down at Springwood on the south side of Brisbane, and we said that we would be listening more, consulting more, and we'd change our approach. And I believe we've been true to that commitment. I point to two things. One is what I've just talked about in terms of strong choices, listening to people who said they didn't want sales of assets, but they were more amenable to leasing of assets, so we listened there. The other one was the issue of the public transport fares. We had $30 million worth of annual savings due to the elimination of carbon tax. I guess what we would have done probably a year and a half ago is we would have said, well, we think we should cut the fares or we should put on more services. We'd have just done it. What we did this time is we took our time to consult the community, and we've then now implementing what they want. So there are two examples of a change of tack.
Just on that then, and Stephen spoke about leadership style, and we reflected on your leadership style and what you felt was necessary for Queensland 12 months ago. And I think you said your style was to go hard, to get things done, no time for a soft approach. Are you telling me that you actually have changed that style in the last 12 weeks?
Well, I've always been a softie. I don't know why people aren't laughing more. But sometimes you've just got to do what has to be done. And you cannot muck around. Again, I go back to, in the first year, we made strong choices about the budget. And we had to do that because, at the end of the day, if government continues to spend money recklessly, then who pays? And I think at times in the debate there's a disconnect. I mean, the expenses of the Queensland government over the 10 years prior to us getting into office went up on average 8.9% each year. So you had the expenses going up like this, and the revenue was not going up that fast. And so what happened was there was a yawning gap, getting bigger and bigger and bigger between what was coming in from taxes and charges and what was going out in terms of the operating costs. So you've just got to deal with that. So, and the final point I make is, it's not till 15-16, as I pointed out in the speech, that we actually make that fiscal surplus. So we might have stepped on the brake in terms of expenditure, but it's taken a few years for it to get to a point where we've passed balancing the books and we've got that surplus and don't have to borrow. So again, I just got to emphasise the state's financial problems, have been very significant, and we had to act decisively.
I think you've always said you want to judge yourself on an improving economy, and seeing that government was working better for them, and some of the examples you've given in your address seems to me that you'd be pretty satisfied on what you've achieved. You could comment on that. But I guess particularly, what are the things that are really left to be done yet? You mentioned the leasing program, but what the stuff that you haven't been able to start yet, which is really going to be your focus if you do get re-elected?
Oh, look, I think there's a whole range of things I could talk about, but in terms of the economy, don't misunderstand me for a moment, ladies and gentlemen. There's much to be done economically. We have seen, for example, and I didn't talk about the 4 pillars today again, there was so much to cover, but you know, the property industry is doing really well now in South East Queensland. We've seen a huge increase in cranes on the skyline. You know, 33% increase was the last figure I saw. We've seen tourism go very strongly in the last 2 years as well, which is very satisfying. And many of these jobs have been created in tourism for young people. That's great. What disturbs me though is that there are other sectors like mining. We've got to get these Galilee Basin coal projects going. Agriculture, my heart goes out to people west of the Divide who are still suffering a terrible drought. I mean, we've got all the policies that get behind people on the land now, but you know, because of the lack of rain, you know, it's not too good out there at the moment. I also make the point that if you go across Queensland, there are certain regional economies that are doing well and other places that are not doing so well. So Cairns is doing well at the moment compared to where we were 3 years ago. Townsville is not. And you know, it's getting this consistency of economic performance across the state that is very important to us. So those are just some thoughts on the economy anyway. There's a lot to be done there.
Thanks, Premier. We might take some questions from the floor. I'm just conscious of time. If you've got a question, could I request that you please stand up, state your name and organisation, and if you could limit yourself to one question. I think we've got a question over there, table 5, if there's a microphone there.
Greg Meek, CBP Lawyers. Premier, you referred to it a minute ago, the consistency of economic performance across the state. The forecasts going out a few years are 6% growth, that'd be great. But how do you ensure that regional Queensland and regional Queenslanders share in that growth? Because obviously it's going to differ between South East Queensland and a lot of the regional centres.
Good point. Well, first I go back to our overall guiding document now, and that's the Queensland Plan, which is saying that we have to build up the regions and talks about the population target, if I can put it that way, of doubling that regional population. So there's a whole lot of planning going on now in Jeff Seeney, the Deputy Premier's area. So he's Minister for State Development, Infrastructure and Planning. He's now created a response which is called Regions Q, and it is about the things that we will do to assist local government, particularly to take those communities forward. So we see ourselves providing the supporting infrastructure and funding to help mayors and councils do the things they need to do. We'll be providing infrastructure anyway, which is state building infrastructure. Our economic development policies will be about encouraging industry in those regional centres. And I suppose I've also got to make the point that we see the need for leadership from local government. So don't get me wrong, I'm not blaming local government. I'm saying we have empowered local government. We have given mayors particularly and councils back the authority that had been taken away from them. I mean, I think today it's a very exciting prospect to be a mayor of a Queensland city or town. You have the tools to do the job. You have the ability to make a huge and profound difference for your community, like in no other state in Australia. And we particularly will get behind mayors who want to lead their communities and do great things to attract industry, to attract jobs. We will back winners. And I guess we have a strong philosophy in this government that central control, like the old Soviet central planned economy didn't work. We're going to let people, we're going to unshackle people, let them get on and do things and create and deliver for themselves. And we'll support people, but we want people to be able to do it themselves.
Any other questions?
Afternoon, Premier. My name is Dennis Roach from G4S. The Queensland Commission of Audit, led by former Howard Government Treasurer Peter Costello, and the QLD Review both made recommendations for opening up a number of areas of the public service to contestability. Can you share with us today your government's progress on those?
Oh, gee whiz. I probably should have done a 20-minute prepared speech on this one. Look, I guess, ladies and gentlemen, just to explain what this is about, the Costello Commission of Audit looked at not just the finances, but actually what government was doing. And as I've mentioned with the strong choices thing, we took the Costello Commission of Audit, which had over 100 recommendations. We took it to Cabinet, then we took it to the party room, and again, we literally voted on every recommendation, whether we accepted it. So it was like a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a maybe. And then we went into the Parliament, handed down, the report was handed down, and we gave a response. So we as a government have said one of our philosophical things is that we really critically examine what things we should do. We believe we are, as going in position, we are obviously creators of policies and laws and regulation, and we're funders of programs and delivers and funders of infrastructure. Then you get into this question, ladies and gentlemen, about what should government be delivering. And the going in position is that we have a process of contestability where we test. So for example, we have a government air wing and a police air wing. And we went out and we tested in the marketplace whether we should contract this out to the private sector to provide those aerial services to the government, or we should keep them in-house. As it happens, after very detailed consideration, independent consideration, and going to market, and then consideration by the Cabinet Budget Review Committee, which I chair, we actually decided to keep it in-house. So my answer is we are proceeding in a methodical and structured way, examining, should we be running prisons? Should we be looking after people with disabilities, literally providing care in their homes? Should we be running aircraft, etc.? Those things are all being tested, an ongoing process, and we are not taking an ideological point of view. It's a difference here. The philosophical point of view is that we test it, and we really are rigorous in saying, really, do we need to do this in-house or not? If it works better and with the private sector delivering it, then we go that way. So that's the essence of what we're about.
I've got a couple more, Premier, so I won't let you off that easy. The 3.4 billion cost of living fund intrigues me. It sounds like a good initiative, and I know you're going to announce more, but in terms of the theme of it or the policy of it, is it going to have an enduring benefit in the way you spend that money? Because you spoke about being fiscally responsible, because you are using capital proceeds, I guess. And is that going to be used as something that's going to be created?
I know, and I'm sure there's been already some comment in the media about speculating on in some way that it's just not going to be spent wisely. Well, I assure you all, ladies and gentlemen, today, that's this government is proposing this. We are not ready to announce this yet, but I assure people, again, it will be absolutely a fiscally responsible thing that we do. There are some major issues that we need to solve in terms of the state's finances and the cost of living burdens on people in their day-to-day life. This fund will allow us to solve some very big or very big public policy issues, and it's something that when we explain it, if we get this right and we explain it, I think people in this room will all be giving it the thumbs up. I can assure you of that. So I'm being very cryptic.
Okay, no, we'll watch this space, Premier.
You're not going to get a scoop today.
Hey, just quickly on federalism, and Stephen mentioned federalism, which is something that's of interest to all of Australia, as well as the Commonwealth Government and state governments, and obviously yourself when you spoke about competitive federalism. But with that white paper being undertaken, from a Queensland perspective, what would you like to see addressed?
Well, COAG's actually on Friday, and an agenda item is the draft white paper, which I've already perused. And I'm actually reasonably happy with the way it's going in terms of what's on the bit of paper, because it is reflecting the things that I espouse. And it was mentioned before by Stephen that we are believers in competitive federalism. I think there's a real need to define who does what the responsibilities of the respective levels of government are, and then people retreating back into their areas of responsibility. I'm happy with the progress of the white paper. I think the federal government, at the moment, though, really, I'm not saying they've done anything bad in particular, but life has continued as per normal. The Prime Minister's made some statements about education being the responsibility of the states. Well, if that's the case, I'm ready to sit down tomorrow and start to negotiate how the federal government withdraws from this particular policy field and let's us get on with it because we want to do the best for our kids in Queensland. That's an example. We think that the policies of the last 10 years particularly have really not been healthy because it's almost like there's a policy which tries to put all the states on a level playing field all the time. You're not rewarded for doing better. You're not penalised for being fiscally, reckless. And both the processes of vertical fiscal equalisation and horizontal fiscal equalisation don't do anything to actually take us forward in a productive way. It really is the case we should let the states get on, run the things that are their responsibility, and the people in the states. I mean, if the Newman government does better in health than any other state, and I assure you, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we're working on for you. We're trying to create the very best free public health system in the nation. Nothing else will do. Now, if we achieve that, and we're well on the way to doing that, well, if you're sitting in New South Wales, you start to go, well, what are you doing, Mr Premier? If you're in South Australia, you start to go, well, how come I can get my teeth looked at quicker in Queensland than here? That's healthy. That's the sort of framework we need to set up. I hope that brings it home.
Yep. Cole will get very cranky with me there, but one very quick question. You've got 900 business, government, community leaders in the room. What's your one ask for all of us here? Because we're all in it together as Queenslanders.
Oh, look, I'll get a couple of asks. The first one is have a look at the Queensland Plan. It's an exciting document. Again, no other jurisdiction in Australia has this. And it's not just about the government implementing it. We all have to implement it. It's got implemented by the community. Community asked for it. We facilitated it. It's yours to implement. And if people say, well, we see Mackay is going to double over the next 30 years, well, there's a whole lot of deductions that come out of it for your business or for your NGO or whatever. The other thing I ask for, frankly and unashamedly, is we're going into an election. This government has been good for Queensland. This government has performed for Queensland. This government, based on objective assessment by interstate commentators, is a high-performing government. And frankly, you have friends and colleagues, neighbours, you have employees, and we'd like your support in telling the message, because it's a powerful and strong and exciting message.
What's the date of that election again, Premier?
2015. Can't be any more precise. But isn't that interesting? I've always said it was 2015. Yeah. Surprise, surprise, it's going to happen. Going to be 2015.
Hey, thanks very much for sharing your vision and your plans and what you've achieved, but also what you've outlined for us. We really appreciate your openness. So could you join me in... Well, I'm going to actually ask Guy Gibson, General Manager for Queensland Communities from fellow sponsor Lend Lease, to do a formal vote of thanks.